So welcome so much to the latest episode of Seeking Clarity. My name is Jason Wakeford. I'm a partner at Clarity Global based here in the US on the West Coast. And today we're exploring a topic that sits right at the intersection of influence and strategy. It's all about how analyst relations and PR can work together to shape markets and build credibility. I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by Austin McCloud, Director of Partnerships at Spotlight Analyst Relations. Austin has a wealth of experience helping companies connect with industry analysts to provide market impact for clients. So huge welcome, Austin, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited and thanks for having me on. I'm excited to chat. It's been a topic that sort of started to intersect in our world quite a bit, so I think it'll be a good conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think first things first, I'd love to just dive in right at the very beginning, if that's okay. I don't know about you, Austin, but quite often I have those interesting questions from friends and family about what is it that you do. I think for any of us in the communications world, it's always an interesting one to answer. So, with that in mind, if you were to explain to your family what you do and what analyst relations is all about, where might you start?
It's maybe the hardest question I get twice a year at Thanksgiving and Christmas, but and I still haven't mastered it. But typically, how I do it is like I try and explain it to in whatever context they're in, and essentially describe analysts as sort of like the ones influencing massive software decision making. So, if you're the CIO of whatever company and you're about to buy, let's call it a CRM system, you're probably not just going to go pick one off the shelf and point at a map and say, oh, we're going to implement that one, spend millions of dollars and hope it works. You're probably going to talk to some people and do some due diligence. So what we do is we work with the vendors to work with the folks that they go talk to, hopefully help influence them and give them, positive feedback and direction. So again, not the easiest thing to explain, but hopefully I did my best there.
I think that's great. Yeah, I remember once I described to my grandmother that tried to explain anyway what PR was all about, and she'd always be picking up the newspaper but I can't see your name in it, and I was like, no, that's because it's working, Grandma. This is great.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good a good overview. And obviously, we're all in the world of communications. It's all around. There's a lot of shared skills, clearly, but the way in which we will adapt depending on the stakeholder in the audience is obviously different, and there's a whole sort of thing to learn there. To your mind, what are some of the biggest differences in how analysts and, say, reporters or journalists approach stories and trends?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think like we're seeing the world start to blend more and more, but I would say like how we typically define it is analysts are much more interested in the in-depth knowledge. So, they want to know product strategy, they want to know your founders, they want to know your sort of founding story, how you're selling it, what your messaging is, in order to align to long-term trends. So I think a lot of times in the, journalist world, they're probably looking more for short turnarounds and things like that, where analysts are really looking for the long-term strategic game.
Mhm. And then for PR teams who maybe work for companies that aren't even in the world of analysts, it seems to me that there's a lot that they could learn from the world of analyst relations. Sort of for those PR professionals out there who perhaps don't really know much at all about the world, like where should they start?
Yeah, I think it's like understanding who you're trying to influence, like who are the buyers. So they're sort of like I think in analyst relations, like you're always going to hear of the most common firms are sort of Gartner, Forrester, IDC, Futurum, and some of those really big firms. But it's harder to sort of gain access and crack into them. So I think as a PR firm starting out, it's sort of like, what category am I playing in? Who am I actually trying to influence? And then trying to find those folks that are actually influencing buying decisions. And, like most markets, you can find, 10 to 20 analysts plus. But I would, my advice to somebody starting would be, find the right 3 to 5 and have a really great relationship with them, build credibility and work up there.
And I guess also to your point, it's a great way of getting extra insights, perhaps in a way that you might not have that level of data from just reading the news. Obviously, we're in PR, we live and breathe the media, but actually, it feels to me that it's very important to sort of think about analysts as a real important source of information, even if you're not necessarily doing a lot of analyst relations per se. Actually, it's a great source of information and insights for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's like we see a ton of like PR teams involved. Like our most healthy programs that we run at Spotlight are the ones where like PR and AR are in conjunction, and it's like, hey, we're about to go to market with this messaging. We should probably run it with somebody who knows all of our competitors, who's been a part of RFPs in this space, and like, is it actually differentiated? Is it going to resonate? And like, hopefully the answer is like all of those things, yes, but you're probably going to get at least one tidbit or tweak to make that messaging a little better before you go launch it. So we find that like the better PR and AR work together, you have a lot more seamless cycles and more effective messaging.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see that, and I think another similarity, sort of from where I see things, is that the way that as PRs we're influencing reporters to write about our clients or our businesses, actually having them talk about that eloquently obviously provides that credibility in exactly the same way as you're seeking to get credibility and expertise from those analyst stakeholders.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny too, like the credibility piece there that you mentioned is just like becoming more and more like like this isn't a generative AI podcast, so I don't want to keep bringing it up, but in that world, like, folks are going to be going searching for software in new ways, but like, how do you actually cut through? And like, you need credible people to vouch for you in this world, especially when you're talking about massive purchases, because it's becoming harder and harder to determine what's real and what's not, what was, auto generated. So that's what we're betting on, is that analysts are going to become increasingly important for that credibility piece. So having a tight loop there will be important.
And as anyone in PR knows, and I guess the wider communications functions, everything now is so much more fragmented. AI is clearly fueling all of that at a pace that is quite hard to believe, really. But that credibility is going to be important, which goes hand in hand with making sure that you're really taking a step back and you're looking at all of the different influencers and credible sources within the ecosystem, and they're going to be lots of different types of people in lots of different types of locations, and you have to go to where those audiences are in order to influence them effectively. Talking more practical steps. So, and we talked about this before. Obviously, a lot of PRs maybe don't know very much, if at all, about analyst relations. Maybe it's they don't have those functions within the team. If you were sort of giving advice to somebody, and we've talked a lot about some of the opportunities with the two working hand in hand, sort of what would your advice be to a PR person who's perhaps listening to this podcast and wants to know what are the two or three things practically I will do after this to sort of up my learning.
Yeah. I think if you have like no AR team at all, I think it's important for you to sort of clearly understand what category you're in and how that's being covered within the major firms at minimum. Like there's huge opportunities and credibility there to start to sort of understand that space. So I think, and there's all sorts of learnings, like even in like a Gartner report that you're not in, there's so much insight in there on your competitors, on the market, all these things that you can take and spin. So that would sort of be my first step, is just like understand who's writing about us that's sort of different than the world I'm in. And then understand how you can leverage that for your own needs.
Mm-hmm. And I think most people will have at least heard of some of the big firms you mentioned, like Gartner, Forrester. Exactly. Do they? I'm interested to know. Do they sort of tend to work differently, or if you were dealing with a Forrester analyst, would it be different to a Gartner one, for example, or does it entirely depend on the sort of the sector they're in and the individual relationship you have with that analyst?
Yeah, it's all within a variation. Like I would say, like I'd be lying if I said yes, they're all the exact same, but they're all within, a certain percentage of each other. Like it's pretty similar. So you can generally treat them all pretty similar. But like I keep saying Gartner and Forrester, but there's so many more out there. Like we've seen actually that's like probably one of the big trends that we're seeing in analyst relations right now, is sort of this like fracturing of like, more and more sort of analysts going on their own, or, three or five ex-colleagues sort of starting to run a market together, and starting their own analyst firm. So we're seeing a lot of like the fracturing from like the big analyst firms that everybody knows, and we're seeing a lot of great, smaller firms start to emerge, and gain a lot of traction with our clients. So I think as like a, like I keep saying Gartner and Forrester, but from a PR perspective, if you're looking to just crack in and start to get into it, like a lot of these smaller firms are easier to work with. You'll see faster results and you'll sort of get your feet wet in this world a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, certainly fragmentation is just the word of the day. I think in no
Yeah.
matter which sector you're in, and I'm presuming this is also being fueled enormously by AI, because I guess you look at some of the qualities of what AI is great at. Looking at lots of data, coming up with trends, summarizing. I would imagine in a industry like analyst relations, it's kind of your perfect tool.
Yeah. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of folks pump out a lot of content. So like that's where like the need to actually get on the phone with these people and have a relationship is becoming more and more important. And like helping our industry is like now that there's so much content, like you actually need somebody to
Mhm.
talk about the content with. Um, so anyway, yeah, we've seen a lot of that start to emerge.